With blue lights flashing and an occasional burp of the siren, all for the fun of it, Zip made Big Sur in 39 minutes. The rustic hamlet was tucked among the groves of redwood and spruce, perpetually shaded by the encircling tree-covered hillsides. Even with this morning hot sun, it felt cool. Big Sur consisted of a gas station, a handful of restaurants, a scattering of retail shops, and a few cabins. Most of the 200 residents lived in steep canyons meandering to the east, their solitude guarded by a rugged terrain and a mind-your-own-business approach to life. He parked by the River Inn, a drinking and eating hangout frequented by locals. The frame building squatted on the banks of the shallow Big Sur River. Zip entered, angling towards the cocktail lounge where a couple of men sat at a table talking in low tones. He took a stool at the bar. The girl behind the counter was about his age, pretty, looking right out of the 60s, he thought. No makeup, straight auburn hair to the waist, Levi's, lots of earrings, a miniature heart tattooed on the top of her wrist. "Hi, Sheriff," she said, giving him a warm smile. He grinned. "Deputy, actually. Good enough for me. What can I get you?" "How about coffee?" he said. She swung around and went for a nearby hot plate, poured from the pot, placed the mug in front of Zip. "Thanks," he said, and put a 5 on the bar. "First one's on me," she said, sliding the money at him. "I'm Dana Richards." She extended her hand. He took it. "Zip Hessler," he said, aware he was blushing. "Sightseeing?" There was a hint of sarcasm. "Couldn't be any prettier scenery around here than you." He knew it was a tacky line, but she gave him a grin. Classy dame. Zip thought, "Sure appreciate it if you could help me out." He slipped the sketch from his jacket pocket and laid it on the polished surface. "Ever see this guy?" Dana examined the image. The artist had drawn a picture of a wrinkled man with sparse gray hair and eyes, same color, lips stretched thin, unsmiling. An angry scar ran from under one eye to the corner of his mouth. She frowned. "Sure looks like Farley Sears, lives up Dry Creek Canyon." Caution in her reply. "What about him?" "Found him in a cove Thursday." She asked with her eyes. Zip nodded. "Dead." Dana's face turned ashen. God, poor Flo. Zip guided the sedan among the ruts, certain he'd bust the oil pan any minute. No more than a car width of dirt and gravel road had taken him up 3 miles from Highway 1, struggling ever higher through a sunless, forested canyon. There was no place to turn around other than an occasional entrance to the hidden cabins. Hessler hated doing this, not sure how to handle it. First time he'd ever had to notify a next of kin. The directions Dana Richards had given Zip held true. He'd have to go by and thank her in the next few days, maybe see if she'd go out with him. Around the next hairpin curve, he pulled up to a makeshift gate of boards, nailed and wired together. Sears scrawled on it in black paint. He got out and dragged it enough to drive through. Past a grove of redwoods, he came upon a cabin squatting in the forest, unpainted, plank siding, a sagging porch, the rusted metal roof crowned with a TV dish. In front sat a dented Chevy pickup rigged with a camper shell. Zip got out and crossed the porch. He rapped on the door. 30 seconds later, the door creaked apart 3 or 4 inches. A woman squinted out at him. "Mrs. Sears?" "Yeah." Quiet, suspicious. "I'm Deputy Sheriff Hessler." "Yeah." Her voice was raspy. She wheezed with each breath. "It's about your husband, ma'am." "He ain't here. Ain't seen him for 3 days." She hesitated, looking as if she were examining a wall calendar in her mind. "Yeah, been 3 days. May I come in?" Zip felt awkward, self-conscious. How did he tell a woman her husband had crushed his body in a rocky cove and he wouldn't be home? She eyed him a few seconds longer before opening the door enough for him to enter a tiny, disheveled living room. Mrs. Sears looked even older than Farley, her face hollow with a pinched mouth, her stooped, thin body shrunk into the flowered dress like she was hiding in it, the hem drooping over black ankle-top boots, not Reeboks. Out the windows in the back, he could see a littered yard overrun by weeds surrounding a neat row of mature cannabis plants. He made a mental note to come back later and chop it down. You looking at Mary Jane out there yonder? She said. She's legal, Sheriff. I got the big C. Lungs about gone. 50 years smoking. Camels and Luckies. Mary Jane helps me take my medicine, keep my food down. It's okay, ma'am. He dropped any notion of destroying it. Zip showed her the sketch. She gave him a quizzical look. That's Farley. He in some kind of trouble? Found him in a cove at Rocky Point, ma'am. He paused, stumbling on what he had to say next. Hate to have to tell you this. He's gone, ma'am. Fall killed him. Florence Sears' somber face registered nothing. He'd even say she was apathetic. She looked off, her dull gray eyes focused beyond the windows, beyond the wall of trees, as if there was something out there Zip couldn't see. You drinking? Yes, ma'am, looks that way. Always drank too much, she said in a castigating tone. Mrs. Sears, I'm going to have to ask you to follow me into Monterey. I know it'll be painful for you, but we need you to identify the body. 15 minutes later, Zip wheeled north onto Highway 1 with Flo Sears, not acting like what he'd call a devastated widow, trailing him in her pickup. He radioed Tanner that they were on the way. Okay, Tanner said, I'll get a warrant and hightail it down there while she's up here to see what we can find. Tanner noticed the marijuana in the yard, shook his head. Not worth chasing. His kids probably kept bigger stashes. He snapped on rubber gloves and tested the rear door. Unlocked. The kitchen was a cluttered mess. Last week's dishes in the sink. In the living room were a few pieces of worn furniture, a 15-inch TV. Family pictures decorated the walls, several more on the mantel over the fireplace, including a photo of a Navy chief petty officer, his arm around a pretty beaming girl with a corsage pinned to her lapel. Farley and Flo, he concluded. He went to the rumpled bedroom, opened drawers, looked in the closet, stepped into the bathroom. The medicine cabinet held vials with Florence's name on them, stuff he'd never heard of, ordered by a Monterey oncologist. Looked like she had serious problems. Farley's only pills were from the VA clinic pharmacy, blood pressure. He inspected the wastebasket. Nothing. He returned to the kitchen. He rummaged through the trash can under the sink, banana peels, milk cartons, beer bottles, papers, coffee grounds, rotted lettuce. Wadded up in a Scott towel, he found an empty brown medicine vial prescribed by a Salinas physician. Viagra, use as directed. The phantom itch struck again. He wrapped the container in his handkerchief and went out the door. Tanner gave the dilapidated work shed at the rear of the property a quick going over. Rusted saws, shovels, garden tools, pots, a pair of dirty cake shoes on a shelf. Reeboks, good for tilling marijuana and walks with your husband. He went to the car and got the plaster kit. The next morning, Tanner called Zip into his office and said, how'd Mrs. Sears take it? Real cool at the house, like she didn't give a damn. That way right up until she looked under the sheet in the morgue. Then the lady kind of fell apart, cried pretty hard, had to sit down and have a glass of water. All the parts don't fit, Tanner said. Zip gave him a questioning look. Cast of her shoes matches the ones in the field. Trying to get hold of the doctor in Salinas, Tanner said. What the hell was the Viagra doing in his pockets? Kind of crazy, Zip said. Let's take a drive to Big Sur and visit the grieving widow. The pickup was parked on the far side of the house. Zip eased the car alongside and the two officers got out. Florence Sears emerged from around the side, short hoe in hand, greeting the men with mistrustful eyes, knuckles white on the handle. Ma'am, I'm Sheriff Tanner. I believe you've met Deputy Hessler here before. Yeah, she said, dropping the hoe on the ground by her mud-encrusted Reeboks. She's just plain worn out, Tanner thought. God, all she's got left is a patch of Tijuana gold, a bunch of tattered dreams, and death lying on her shoulder. He had the urge to just walk away, leave it be. Who gives a shit? Wonder if we could have a word with you, he said. Her reply was an almost imperceptible nod. Mrs. Sears, before you say anything, he started a small tape recorder as he quoted Miranda. She shook her head. Don't matter. Last Wednesday I found those blue pills. Told him I had. He said he was saving them for a special time with me. She struggled to take a deep breath, settling for 2 shallow ones. Goddamn lie. No sex for us in 6, 7 years since I got sick. He was banging some bitch up Palo Colorado Canyon. Count on it, I know. It gets around. Tanner shot a look at Zip and returned to Mrs. Sears. Ma'am, you don't have to. He was near drunk, like every night. Wednesday night was real warm, so I say to him, okay, you swallow a couple of them little blue jewels and let's go to Rocky Point. We'll go to the field, our field, just like before. Before? Tanner said. Rocky Point, the first place we made love when we moved here, just out of the Navy. Sounds kind of dumb now, I guess. She stopped, as if expecting Tanner to say something. He blushed. He couldn't think of a reply. Halfway convinced that this was another woman, another time. We were full of cheap wine and came out to Rocky Point. We didn't even know that's what it was, the name of the place. Just drove out to see the sunset. Her voice drifted lower, becoming husky and sensuous. Rich, sexy night, full of stars. Piece of moon, hot wind. We grabbed a blanket, walked out in the field. She lifted her head and stared at the melancholy fog drifting in from the coast. Her eyes mirrored some faraway place. It was wild, steamy love, exciting love. A pause, her lips forming a smile. She sighed. Real love. Tanner's gut nodded. God, he thought Flo's a poet. Under that tough hide, she's all poetry, tossing beautiful, pure lyrics to the wind, not aware of them. Kind of the way he scratched dumb little poems on scraps of paper, balling them up and pitching them in the wastebasket. Lines he used to share with Beth. Not anymore. He felt an immense sadness. We walked through the field down to the cliff and stood there. Her eyes glistened in the warm wind. Tanner said, when you got out of the Navy? She gave him a look as if you're an idiot. I mean, last Wednesday night. The cliff, she said, such a warm wind. Yes, ma'am, the cliff, attempting to keep her and himself on track. Farley, she wavered her eyes on the sky again. Farley, his voice was mean. He says, Flo, what the hell's got into you? What the hell are we standing around here for? She stopped. Tanner waited. In a matter-of-fact monotone, she said, that's when I pushed him. Tanner felt his neck hairs prickle. He tightened his hand on the recorder. You mean you, don't you see? He saw her tears welling up, and embarrassment rushed through Tanner like he remembered when he first saw his mother cry. He wanted to reach her. He didn't know how. Sheriff, I could feel him looking at me, her words now soft and cool and gray like the fog. Out there in the dark, sailing off that cliff. She cocked her head slightly as if listening. He was saying, why, Flo? Why? Her voice trembling, Flo whispered, because you forgot, Farley. You forgot.